It always starts the same way. She looks at you, not truly seeing who you are, but the man she imagines you could be. You feel it, don't you? That intense gaze, that flicker of anticipation. Or is it something else? A hunger? You think you're finally understood, finally seen, but you are wrong. You are being assessed, appraised, like a blank canvas, waiting for her masterpiece. And that masterpiece? It's never been you. Carl Jung, a man who plunged into the darkest depths of the human soul, didn't offer comforting platitudes. He gave us brutal, surgical truth. His life's work was charting the unconscious, that vast, unseen force operating beneath our awareness. And what he discovered about women was startling. They don't just fall in love with men. They fall in love with the idea of men, with the idealization, with the projection. And most unsettling of all, they rarely know they're doing it. You might think she's choosing you, but she's choosing a version of you, a psychological marionette crafted in her own mind to play a part in her personal drama. And the moment you stop playing that role, she doesn't change the script. She replaces the actor. Jung called this the Animus, the inner masculine archetype within every woman. When this animus is raw, unformed, or untamed, it becomes a tyrant. It's the silent force that drives women towards damaging men and away from good ones. It fuels illogical arguments, a need to control without true understanding, and moralizing without self-reflection. Jung didn't soften this truth. He saw it as a kind of spiritual encroachment, a state where a woman loses herself, operating not from her own consciousness, but under the shadowy command of her inner masculine ideal. And men? You fall for it. Because no one taught you to recognize it. You mistake desire for genuine knowing. You confuse being chosen for being truly understood. You believe her when she says you're unique, when in truth, you're just the latest actor cast in a role she's been rehearsing since childhood. And when the illusion cracks, when the facade crumbles, you're left bewildered, betrayed, diminished, questioning what you did wrong. But you did nothing wrong. You simply stopped being a convincing actor in someone else's play. Jung warned that the only escape from this psychological charade is individuation, the relentless journey towards inner wholeness. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men never begin that journey. You've been conditioned to chase affirmation, to crave validation, to let women define your worth. And as long as you do, you'll play the same role, replaced the moment the audience grows tired. Individuation isn't appealing. It's brutal. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've hidden, the vulnerable, the doubtful, the branders. It demands you stop blaming women for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. Because Jung understood something most men never will. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. You don't establish your worth through her affection. You establish it by standing alone, fully conscious, fully accountable, fully alive. A man who has faced his own unconscious cannot be swayed by projection. He is no longer a puppet in another's idealization. He is the architect of his own life. Jung observed that the greatest tragedy for modern men isn't rejection. It's their willingness to contort themselves into any shape they believe will gain acceptance. You call it compromise. You call it partnership. You call it love. Jung called it self-abandonment. He warned that men who neglect their own inner growth become servants to feminine projection, molding themselves like soft clay into whatever form a woman dictates. Women who are often oblivious to their own true desires. These men stop being men. They become smiling, assenting, agreeable facades, performing until they forget who they were before they put on the mask. And women? They feel this with a sensitivity far beyond your understanding. The very qualities you believe will secure her affection, your compliance, your predictability, your constant presence, become the precise reason for her fading attraction. Why? Because the feminine instinct Jung taught isn't drawn to security. It's drawn to enigma, to hazard, to the man she cannot entirely grasp or control. The moment you make yourself entirely transparent, devoid of boundaries, devoid of a strong inner core, you don't become more lovable. You become indistinct, expendable, interchangeable. And here lies the paradox that keeps most men enslaved. You fear solitude more than you fear being inauthentic. You'd rather abandon yourself than lose her. You'd rather exist in a role than face the terror of standing without an audience's approval. But Jung taught that until a man embraces that aloneness, he will never truly be free. He wrote that individuation is not for the faint of heart. It demands a symbolic death, letting all the counterfeit versions of yourself burn away so that something real can finally emerge. But let me tell you something rarely said aloud. Individuation is isolating, profoundly so. Because as you walk that path, you begin to see things you can no longer unsee. You start to recognize the manipulations, the personas, the quiet lies people tell themselves just to feel safe. And when you try to speak of it, they mock you. They call you detached, arrogant, too serious. They blame you for the problem, but you are not the problem. You are the reflection. And people despise the reflection when it shows them something they refuse to face. Jung understood this intimately. He spent decades studying those too terrified to face their own shadow, the dark, disowned parts of their psyche. And women, Jung cautioned, are often raised in environments that praise them for avoiding direct conflict, for being inherently pure, sensitive, perfect, just as they are. But Jung wasn't fooled. He wrote that the greatest danger for women was their unconscious animus, an internal voice that speaks with deceptive conviction, false authority, and moral self-righteousness. He warned that if a woman doesn't confront and integrate this inner masculine energy, she becomes its prisoner, projecting it onto every man she meets, blaming him for the very internal conflict she refuses to address within herself. And there you are, imagining yourself her rescuer, believing you'll be the exception, convinced that if you just love her hard enough, prove your worth loud enough, perform skillfully enough, she'll finally choose the real you. But that's not how projection works. Jung taught that projection is a thief. It steals reality and replaces it with fantasy. Until both men and women awaken from that fantasy, they are doomed to repeat the same tragic dance, blaming each other, never realizing they're both interacting with ghosts. And here's the most paradoxical twist of all. The woman who once saw you as her hero will one day see you as her enemy. Not because you changed, but because you failed to perfectly embody the idealization she imposed upon you. And she will remain utterly blind to her own hand in it. Jung described this psychological disloyalty as inevitable when neither person takes responsibility for their inner world. You didn't deceive her. You didn't betray her. You simply failed to meet the expectations of an unseen persona she conjured in her unconscious mind. You were never that persona to begin with, and that's why she resents you, not for your flaws but for your inability to play a legend she never told you were cast to portray. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Nowhere is this truer than in relationships. Both men and women enter them not as whole individuals, but as walking projections, dragging their unlived anxieties, their unmet needs, their unresolved traumas into the arms of someone they barely know. You call it love. Jung called it a form of possession. And like a hypnotized man, you step into the same trap again and again, believing this time will be different. But it never is. Because you haven't yet asked the hardest question a man can ask himself: what if I am responsible for this recurring pattern? You want to blame women. You want to call them manipulative, deceitful, shallow, but Jung would look you in the eye and ask, and why did you let that particular woman choose you in the first place? You see, the man who refuses to face his own inner feminine is doomed to be enslaved by hers. You are not a victim. You are a participant. You chose to play the fool. You chose to be the actor in her personal legend, because facing your own emptiness, your own lack of wholeness, felt infinitely more terrifying than playing a part in someone else's fantasy. And here's where most of you will tune out. Because this is where the comfort ends and the accountability begins. Jung didn't offer quick fixes. No three-step guide to alpha male dominance. He offered the grueling, lifelong work of self-examination, of sitting in the quiet solitude of your own mind until the illusions begin to crack, until that voice in your head, whispering that you're nothing without her, finally starts to fade. And believe me, that voice will fight for its life. It will tell you that you need her, that you're incomplete without her, that no man can exist without feminine affirmation. But Jung's work hints at something far more dangerous. It hints that the man who can stand utterly independent of her, without her approval, without her praise, without being indispensable, that is the man who is truly liberated. Liberated from projection, liberated from performance, liberated from the oppression of living as someone else's idea of a man. And when you reach that state, you don't become indifferent or cold. You become authentic, rooted, centered, fully alive in your own being. And that is when, paradoxically, women will feel most powerfully drawn to you, not because you depend on them, but precisely because you don't. And you will smile, not with cruelty, but with a new understanding. You'll understand that she too is on her own journey, that she must face her own animus, that she must awaken from her own deceptions, and you cannot do that work for her. You cannot rescue her from herself. You can only do what Jung did, walk your own path with such courage that you become a living reflection, mirroring the truth back to all who dare to look. Most will avert their gaze, but a chosen few, a precious few, will be grateful. And that, my friend, is the difference between being loved for the role you play and being honored for the man you have become. And when you reach that point, when you finally grasp you no longer need to perform, you'll notice something strange. People will become profoundly uneasy in your presence. They'll feel it, even if they can't name it. The sheer gravity of your being will disturb them, because you no longer fit into the predictable boxes they use for their own security. Jung warned that the individuated man isn't celebrated by society. He's viewed with suspicion, misunderstood, labeled aloof, or arrogant. But the truth is far more unsettling. You've simply become impervious, unconquerable, unswayable, because you see the underlying game. And here's where it gets amusing. The very people who once demanded your attention, your validation, your approval, will start to resent you for not needing theirs. Women, especially those still lost in the fantasy of the ideal man, will accuse you of being emotionally unavailable. They'll say you're too cerebral, too analytical, too detached. But what they really mean is, they can no longer control you. You've walked off their stage. You've stopped following their script. And without that script, they don't know how to interact with you, because you've stopped being a persona and started being a man. Jung once quipped that our gods have become our diseases. What ancient cultures called divine possession, modern psychology labels neurosis. And make no mistake, men who chase validation are the most spiritually afflicted of all. You believe you're being romantic when you say, "I would do anything for her," or "she is my entire world." But Jung would shake his head and tell you that what you call love is, in reality, a refusal to carry the weight of your own soul. It's easier to project it onto a woman, make her the guardian of your hope, your significance, your purpose. Because if she carries it, you're off the hook. But here's the cruel twist. When she realizes she was never meant to carry your soul, she will drop it. She must drop it. Because no woman, no matter how much she loves you, can sustain the burden of a man who refuses to sustain himself. And when she drops it, you'll feel betrayed. But you shouldn't. You should be grateful. Because in that shattering moment, you finally stand face to face with the truth. The work of becoming a man was never hers to do. It was always yours. And in that raw moment of perception, you have two choices. You can blame her. You can grow bitter. You can join the angry chorus of men who lash out at women, ridiculing them, resenting them, abandoning them like cowards who never dared face their own emptiness. Or you can do what Jung would have insisted. You can turn inward. You can begin the solitary, terrifying, liberating work of individuation, of becoming whole without relying on another to complete you. Because the truth is, the woman you're seeking externally, she is a reflection of the part of yourself you've abandoned. Until you face that part, every relationship will be a performance, every bond a negotiation, every love a lie. But when you do confront it, when you integrate your own internal feminine, you transform. You become a man who no longer needs to pursue women. You don't chase. You don't manipulate. You don't perform. You stand still, fully anchored in your identity. And from that place, something extraordinary happens. You no longer attract women who desire a character. You attract women who desire authenticity. And you will know it when it happens. Because she won't demand you perform. She won't try to rewrite your story. She won't fall in love with a fantasy of you. She will stand before you, unvarnished and real. Not a goddess seeking adoration, but a human being, ready to walk her own path alongside yours. No facades, no projections, no pretense. And when you meet her, the authentic her, not the idealization, you'll feel the difference immediately. She won't overwhelm you with grand pronouncements. She won't see you as the missing piece of her existence. She won't tempt you with promises of completion because she isn't seeking to be completed. She isn't seeking rescue. She has done the work. She has faced her own shadow. She has confronted her own animus. She has burned away her own illusions. And that is why she will not ask you to perform. She will not ask you to carry her soul. She will stand there, self-possessed, looking you directly in the eye, not as a man she wishes to reshape, but as a man she is finally ready to meet. And in that meeting, there is no urgency, no dependency, no performance. There is only truth. And that truth, Jung taught, is the most rare and most dangerous form of love, the kind that asks for nothing, yet gives everything, because it is not born of necessity. It is born of freedom, freedom to choose, freedom to leave, freedom to stand together, without illusions, without masks, without fear. But let me warn you, most of you will never reach this. Most of you will surrender long before you arrive. You will accept the performance. You will accept the fantasy. You will accept the fleeting rush of being seen as someone you're not, because facing your true self still feels too intolerable. But if you have the fortitude, the brutal, soul-stirring fortitude, to keep walking, to keep standing alone, to keep dismantling every counterfeit layer you've built to gain approval, you will eventually find yourself at the precipice of something terrifyingly beautiful. You will find yourself. And when you do, women will no longer be the source of your identity. They will no longer be the mirror you use to feel like a man. They will transform into something entirely different. Collaborators, not conquests. Reflectors, not nurturers. Confederates, not redeemers. And you will love them not from need, but by choice. From a position of strength. From a position of integrity. From a position that knows, without apology, who you are. Carl Jung didn't give you a map. He gave you a warning. A warning that every man who refuses to confront himself will become a slave to the projections of others, especially the projections of women. But he also gave you a summons to walk the path of individuation, to stop blaming women for the roles you willingly play, to stop seeking wholeness in another's eyes, to stop waiting to be chosen, because the man who chooses himself completely, unequivocally, relentlessly, is the man who cannot be governed by fantasy. He cannot be tempted by performance. He cannot be reduced to a character in someone else's story. He becomes the creator of his own existence. And if you've reached this point, if you felt this resonate somewhere deep inside you, don't just scroll away. Don't let this be another piece of information you consume and forget. Take a moment right now to like this video, share it with another man who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe for more. Your engagement isn't just for us. It's for the next man still trapped in the illusion, waiting to be set free. Help us spread this message. Help us awaken the world, one man at a time.